Funny enough, this will be 2 Sundays in a row with a story about rain. Thank you, Quan. So a month or so ago, Paul and the boys and I went to the University of Louisville for a campus tour because my firstborn is a senior. We walked around campus and I was all in. My wonderful firstborn, and he's looking at colleges, and I'm excited for him. And I mean, visiting a college, right? This just seems like a happy thing, and so it was great. Now, important detail: it was raining. It wasn't sprinkling. It was soaking, drenching rain. It rained as though there were an ark nearby, just waiting to rise with the waters. Now, I'm still enthusiastic about this tour. I mean, what are you going to do? And I've got a big umbrella to help keep me fairly dry. But, oh, my shoes. My shoes got absolutely soaked. So we go from building to building, and the tour guide tells us all the interesting things. That's great. But I could feel the water in my shoes. The sensation of wet, squishy toes inside of wet, squishy shoes. But again, what are you going to do? And so the tour finishes up. We get lunch. We go home. We disperse with the wet socks and wet shoes. We put them somewhere to dry. Life goes on. Now, a couple days later, I'm at work. Now, my shoes are dry. And I work inside a library, so it is dry in there. And I'm walking to put something away, and suddenly I feel the sensation of water in my shoes. My shoes, my socks, my feet, they are all dry. But I have this phantom sensation of water in my shoes. For that moment, my brain and my feet are telling me that I have squishy wet toes inside of squishy wet shoes. It's not raining. I am not in the same location where I was when my shoes were wet. But there's a very real physical sensation in my feet, right? The memory and the experience of that is echoing inside of me, and I am carrying it with me even though I'm not there anymore. Now, Quan talked last week about the storm not lasting forever. The storm passes, the rain ends, and we thank God for that. But sometimes the storm makes an impact on us that sticks around. After a literal storm, there might be trees down, there might be limbs in the yard, there might be a tree across the road, there might be water in the basement, maybe the power went out for a while. And in our life storms and our hard seasons, there might be old shame, old grief, old fears, rejections, old expectations, things that happened but aren't still happening. But some of those things might have effects that cause those phantom sensations later. But the feeling in my shoes does not mean that I'm still in the rain. And the storm damage doesn't mean that you're still in the storm. And the phantom sensations of shame or fear or rejection do not mean that you are still in your past situation. We aren't where we were. We're not who we were. So there's my literal rain story, and here's a life rain story. I spent a lot of years in an unhealthy community. I was all in while I was there. It was great. I was enthusiastic. Also, I was hurting. And I didn't understand some of what was happening around me. I didn't understand some of what was happening in me. And also, I didn't realize it was raining. And the water was pouring down on me, and it was filling my shoes. And gradually, I began to see water damage, and I realized it was raining. And eventually, I left to get out of the rain. And I've spent several years working on my own personal storm recovery. Therapy, conversations with other people who've been in similar rain or that same rain and got out. lots of mending broken bits or looking for rotten bits that need to be removed. In some ways, I've built a whole new Becky. Storm recovery is not a solo project. Recently, a friend sent me a list of things that cannot be healed in isolation. She sent it because she and I have both experienced some of these things and also have experienced the power of community in healing. Because some things require community or relationship to walk through, right, in order to work through, in order to heal from. The wound of not belonging, the belief that maybe you're fundamentally too much or not enough, relational patterns, the grief of not feeling seen, shame. Some parts of our becoming require other people to help us see ourselves differently. But sometimes I treat my current self as if I were still my past self, and my past self as if she should have known what I know now, as if past Becky should have had current Becky's understanding and life experience. Do you ever do that? Do you ever look back and treat your past self unkindly? So I want to talk about what happens when we realize we are not who we once were. For one, hopefully, we give grace to the person that we were. We give grace for what that person knew, what that person was experiencing, what that person didn't yet understand. And then hopefully we become willing to let God keep changing the person we are. First, grace. Whatever it is in our past, there's an extent to which we didn't know what we didn't know. Now, that is absolutely not an excuse for everything we've ever said or done. Sometimes you need to deal with your past junk. There are things absolutely that I've needed to repent from, I've needed to turn from, make amends for, change. If only I had recognized some of the damage that the rain was doing and the ways the rain was affecting my thinking and my perspective. There are things in my past I really and truly wish I had handled differently in a variety of seasons. And if I knew then what I know now, I would have dealt with them differently. So I take responsibility. I repent, meaning I change my thinking. I turn my direction. And I remind myself I'm not still in that same storm. I'm not still in that same rain. Paul says in Philippians chapter 3, verses 13 and 14, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. Now, it's interesting to hear Paul say that because Paul did some awful things, even in the name of God. And I don't think that Paul's telling us to literally forget the past or to pretend it didn't happen. He knows what he did, and he knows who he was, and he's taken responsibility for that, but without ongoing crippling shame. I think what Paul's saying in Philippians 3 is that the past doesn't get to be the direction I'm facing, and the past doesn't get to determine the direction that I'm walking now. So I give myself grace. I'm not where I was or who I was, and I don't need to stay stuck or condemned in that past situation or in my past self. I can acknowledge what was wrong. Some of what I have said and done has been unhealthy and unkind and harmful and not the version of love that I now believe God is. But I can do those things. I can look ahead. I can make those amends. I can turn without getting stuck or making my past self into a villain. When I feel the sensation of those squishy, wet shoes, I remind myself my shoes are now dry. And I keep walking forward. You're in a different place on your path with a different understanding. You're not in that same storm. And you can see more clearly now how to avoid some of those same puddles. Now, we can't become someone who never gets wet again. That's not possible. Right? As Quan said last week, I mean, if you're not in a storm right now, you're going to be. You've been in one, you'll be in one again. The rain and the storms are going to come. But we want to be people who can survive the rain, who know that we can survive the rain. And when the rain is falling and your shoes get soaked again, you can handle it differently. And if you see someone else caught in the rain, you can come alongside with an umbrella or a towel or some dry shoes. So if you're in a place where storm recovery has felt really hard and you're still affected in ways that are bogging you down, I want to say, stop being so hard on yourself. You're okay. I don't mean that everything you might have done was okay. I don't mean you've handled all the storms super well. I'm not saying you haven't been in storms of your own making. I mean that you're loved. You exist in the love and the mind and the heart of God. I was thinking about that song. Actually, I thought all three songs this morning were really fitting. But one of the songs says, wait, I'm going to get this wrong. Your heart is my home. Yes? My heart is your home. But here's the thing. I think that can go either way. Right? I mean, we say, like, Jesus lives in my heart. Yes, but also you exist in the heart of God. And you're still becoming. And God's love, which is love itself, is way bigger than anything you do understand about yourself or your worst misunderstanding of yourself. God's love is not based on how well you've managed to become your current you or some imaginary trajectory of where you should be. So we can afford to give ourselves grace to every version of us that we've been, while also being open to God, who keeps walking with us as we keep moving into the future and leading us into who we're becoming. There's a really beautiful freedom, I think, in being able to say to my past self and to other people when they're inclined to be unkind to their past selves, you are a dear human, beloved of God. You are worthy of existence. There were things you didn't understand. You can turn where you need to. Stay open to God's love. You are constantly on a path. Keep walking. There's a Jason Gray song called Becoming with a message I really like. Part of the lyrics are, I am miles from where I was, yet so far from where I want to be. With each step, I learn to trust the Maker is still making me. And I'm becoming. He goes on to say, it's not arrival, it's direction. It's the living and the learning, not the finish line, but the journey. I'm becoming who I am. I'm still becoming. I'm always becoming. You're on a path. I'm on a path. We're on paths. And our paths lead to love, and our paths are lined with love all the way along. And, as Steve Miller would say, time keeps on slipping, slipping, slipping into the future. And there is no pause button in life. There's no rewind button. There's not even a closed captioning. Come on, who else uses closed captioning when you're watching stuff? Anybody? Not just me? Okay, yes. But we don't get to stop this life movie, which is not a Lifetime movie, I hope. But we don't get to stop it, right? We can't pull a Zach on Saved by the Bell and like pause. We can take time alone to reflect, and we totally should. But we don't get to hit an actual immediate pause button and say, wait, what did they say? What does that mean? What was I supposed to understand there? Life just keeps moving forward. And sometimes it takes us a while to figure out what happened. And sometimes by the time we figure out what happened and what it all meant, we're not even the same person that we were when it happened. We know more now. We're different now. It's not fair to keep looking back and judging that person who didn't know what we know now. Time doesn't move backward like that. So grace as we walk forward, and openness as we walk forward, being willing to allow God to walk us through challenges in our path and the changes as we go, being willing to change our understanding and then our behavior. So I want to look at a person who I think is a really solid example of forgetting what's behind and straining ahead, because what's ahead is good. So a lot of you will be very familiar with, missing a slide, that's okay, that's my fault, with the Apostle Peter, one of the original followers of Jesus. Now, his name was Simon until Jesus renamed him, and I say that just because I'm going to refer to him as Simon at some point in the reading here when we get to the chapter we're getting to. But Peter was a few different Peters in the Bible. By the time we see him in Acts chapter 10, which is where we're going to go, he has a whole history. He has been in plenty of rain and lots of big waves, some of his own making. When you look at Peter, you get the feeling Peter was probably pretty impulsive his whole life. At one point, he rebuked Jesus. And Jesus said, "Get behind me, Satan." Now, I don't know. I can't be sure. I could be wrong, but I'm guessing Peter was kind of uncomfortable for a little bit after that. Then Peter saw Jesus walking on water and decided he could do that too. And he did briefly. Then he really saw the waves and the power of the water, and he began sinking. And Jesus had to reach down and pull him back up out of the water. And again, could be wrong. I'm thinking that was probably uncomfortable. Then during the last evening that Jesus had with his disciples, Jesus said they would all fall away from him. And Peter announced boldly that he would never. And yet, Jesus said to Peter that before the rooster crowed, Peter would deny him 3 times. And Peter did. And when that rooster crowed, Peter wept bitterly. But he changed after each of these because he understood more after each of these. He also attacked the high priest's servant, tried to cut off his ear, and then Jesus had to heal it. And again, I'm thinking this is probably an uncomfortable moment. And after all of that, I think it'd be really easy for Peter to sink into some shame about things he'd done, things he'd said, when he didn't know better. He could step back and say, I do love Jesus, but, for the future, I think I'm just going to sit stuff out because, man, I've been so wrong so often. And I don't trust myself to do anything at this point. I've done too much that's been too bad. But he didn't. Maybe part of that's because he's so impulsive. I don't know. But Peter kept walking his path step by step. He was open to changing his understanding, and he was open to behaving differently according to his new understanding. So now we're in Acts chapter 10. Jesus has died, he's been resurrected, he's ascended into heaven, and more people are hearing about Jesus and following the way of Jesus. And Peter's about to have yet another probably uncomfortable moment. So I'm going to read a phrase, Acts chapter 10, meaning it's going to be some reading, but a lot of paraphrasing. I'm not going to indicate when I'm doing what. You can go read Acts chapter 10 on your own, and I recommend it. So, Peter went up to the roof to pray. He got hungry, he wanted something to eat, and while the meal was being prepared, he fell into a trance. He saw heaven opened and something like a large sheet being let down to earth by its 4 corners. It contained all kinds of 4-footed animals as well as reptiles and birds. Then a voice told him, "Get up, Peter, kill and eat." "Surely not, Lord," Peter replied. "I have never eaten anything impure or unclean." The voice spoke to him a second time, "Do not call anything impure that God has made clean." This happened 3 times. And the sheet was taken back to heaven. While Peter was wondering about the meaning of the vision, some men showed up at the house. Then the Spirit said to him, "Simon, 3 men are looking for you. Get up and go downstairs. Do not hesitate to go with them, for I have sent them." Peter met the men, asked them why they were there, and they replied, "We have come from Cornelius the centurion. He is a righteous and God-fearing man who is respected by all the Jewish people." Key note here, he himself was not Jewish. "A holy angel told him to ask you to come to his house so that he could hear what you have to say." Then Peter invited the men into the house to be his guests, which is kind of wild because they weren't Jewish. The next day, Peter and some other believers went with them. They walked to, I don't remember the town where they were going, the town where Cornelius was. Cornelius had called together his relatives and close friends, and when Peter entered the house, Cornelius met him and fell at his feet in reverence, but Peter made him get up. "Stand up," he said. "I am only a man myself." And I wonder in that moment if he remembered past a bit. But Peter said to the large gathering of people, "You are well aware that it is against our law for a Jew to associate with or visit a Gentile. But God has shown me that I should not call anyone impure or unclean. So when I was sent for, I came without raising any objection. May I ask why you sent for me?" Cornelius answered, 3 days ago, I was in my house praying in the afternoon. Suddenly a man in shining clothes stood before me and said, "Cornelius, God has heard your prayer and remembered your gifts to the poor. Send for Simon, who is called Peter. Here's where he's staying. So thanks for coming here, and we're ready to hear whatever God has told you to tell us." Then Peter said, "I now realize how true it is that God does not show favoritism, but accepts from every nation the one who fears him and does what is right. You know the message God sent to the people of Israel, announcing the good news of peace through Jesus Christ, who is Lord of all." And then he told them more about what Jesus had done. He said, "We are witnesses of everything he did in the country of the Jews and in Jerusalem. They killed him by hanging him on a cross, but God raised him from the dead on the 3rd day and caused him to be seen by witnesses whom God had already chosen, by us who ate and drank with him after he rose from the dead. He commanded us to preach to the people and to testify that he is the one whom God appointed as judge of the living and the dead." While Peter was still speaking these words, and again I've condensed, the Holy Spirit came on all who heard the message. The believers who had come with Peter were astonished that the gift of the Holy Spirit had been poured out even on Gentiles. Then Peter said, "Surely no one can stand in the way of their being baptized with water." So they were baptized. And then they asked Peter to stick around for a few days. So to sum up, Peter went to pray. God interrupted his understanding. Peter argued. Visitors arrived. Peter went somewhere he normally wouldn't have gone. And by the end, he was saying, "Now I realize God has shown me," and welcoming people he once would have considered outside. At no point in that story did Peter know what was coming next. And he did not have a pause button. Now, the walk from one place to another was kind of long, so I'm sure he had some time to reflect and pray and think as he walked. But he didn't have days to sit alone and ponder and journal and process because, boom, next thing. The Peter who jumped out of the boat to swim to go catch up with the resurrected Jesus is different than the Peter who denied even knowing Jesus after Jesus was arrested. And the Peter at the end of Acts chapter 10 is different than the Peter at the beginning of the chapter. I mean, I don't want to oversimplify. It's the same Peter. It's the same guy. And it's not like he figured everything out after this and suddenly now, ooh, holy man, perfect in all his ways. He kept getting things wrong, but he also kept walking and being open to God, showing him what he'd missed, what he'd misunderstood. He kept growing and changing. He was willing to be interrupted. Peter's one who could have had serious regrets, big wishes for a rewind button. But he says in verse 34, now I realize how true it is that God does not show favoritism. He understood something he hadn't before, and it changed what he did moving forward. His understanding of God and of people and of love was bigger and clearer. Now, my story is focused on the impact of storms and the fact that those can linger. But Peter's story here shows us how God can change us as we keep walking forward from whatever was in our past, either recent or distant or both or all. And really, we see that through the whole Bible. The whole Bible is like this path through storms and rethinking and new understanding. Now, I want to say in Acts chapter 10, Peter's praying because he's open to hearing what God might say. He made himself interruptible, and God did interrupt him. I think it's a good and healthy thing to spend some time alone, talking with God, being aware of the divine, listening to what God, who is love, might want to say to us, how God might want to redirect our thinking, our perspective, our understanding. We need times and spaces where we allow ourselves to be interrupted, where we allow interruptions in how we're thinking about ourselves and about others. Sometimes because we need God to help us feel better about something from our past, but probably mostly because God is continually, day by day, enlarging our understanding of who we are, who other people are, and what love requires of us. What does love look like today in these shoes, in this weather, with these people? Now, I like to tell stories about my boys. Y'all saw one of my boys up here. He told a terrible joke. Now, I like to tell my boys stories about things that they've said or done in the past. And I mean, they're either funny stories or they're grown-worthy stories, right? And the boys don't always love it when I tell them these stories. But it's funny because they're not quite the same people that they are now. Some of the stories sound like them, some of them don't, but it was them. But I don't judge my boys, who are teenagers now, for things that they did when they were 4, because they were 4. And also, they're not 4 now. I don't know about you, but I can have a tough time extending that same grace to myself. I remember something I did at 15 or 18 or 23 or 34 or 42, and I think, how could I possibly have done that? Like, what was I thinking to have said that? Well, I was 15 or 18 or 25 or 33 or 42 or whatever, and I had the understanding and the wounds and the fears and the environment and the maturity of that particular point in my life. I didn't have the understanding that I have now, and I don't have the understanding that I'll have a year from now or 5 years from now or whenever. Do I wish I did? Yes. Is that how life works? No. I mean, let's really break it down. You won't be 100% the person you are today a month from now. Life keeps lifing, and we keep traveling the path that we're on. But when I tell my boys stories about goofy things they did when they were little, I'm not trying to shame them. I love them. I love the story of who they've been becoming. No one thing they did when they were young is the sum total of who they are now. It's not the sum total of who they were then. But how much better does God see our stories? God knows who you were, and God knows who you are, and God knows who you're becoming. God has been with you the whole time, loving you and all the people around you. So can we keep walking and listening and repenting and learning and loving in any weather? I can feel the water. Sometimes I still feel that squishy feeling in my shoes, y'all. It is so weird. I remember the rain. I remember the experience and the sensations of walking around campus in wet shoes. But when I look down, I see that my shoes are dry, and I'm somewhere else now. Yeah, that happened there then, but I'm here now. The storms have affected me, but they don't have authority over me. I learned in the storms, but I am not a permanent captive of any storm or any past version of me. or any past misunderstanding. The storm doesn't get to tell you where you are now or who you're becoming. So we can look backward with grace, and we can take responsibility where we need to, and we can look forward with openness. Now, it seems like most sermons ought to have some kind of action steps. And I don't know what you should do, and I don't know where you are in your path right now. So I'm going to provide a buffet of potential action steps, and I'm going to trust that you and God can identify and figure out what resonates with you. So, be kind to yourself. Past self, current self, whatever self, be kind. Love your enemies, and sometimes you make yourself your enemy. Don't do that. Love your enemy. Love you. Deal with your past stuff. Come on, y'all. We all got junk. Deal with it. Go to therapy. Journal. Be real in your community. Whatever your community is, find some community you can trust and be real with them. Spend time in quiet. Be quiet. Talk to God. Again, I don't know where you are. I don't know which of those goes, maybe that's a little bit more what I ought to be doing. Y'all figure that out. But where are my feet now? Where are your feet today? Wherever they are, God is right there with you. God is right there too. Right here, right now. God was with you in the storm, but God's not stuck back there in the storm, and neither are you. We might feel it sometimes. We might really, really feel it sometimes. But we're here now, and God is right here with us, with you, with me, and God will be there in the next storm. And God is loving every version of you and of me and of them that's existed. And God is loving every version of you and me and them that will exist. God is speaking and teaching and guiding. God is pouring out love. And God is giving grace after grace. And tomorrow, when your feet are somewhere else, they may be wet and they may be dry, but God will be right there with you then too.